But the reality of it is if you actually control your time, if you control your time on a daily basis and you fundamentally put it into the things that matter, you end up gaining all the wealth and it ends up leading towards a life of purpose. For me, it's very much helping someone that cannot help themselves. Like, it's simply that. So whether it's a homeless person on the street or it's the orphanages that we've started, it very much gives me this satisfaction, this fulfillment, this deep fulfillment that cannot be given in any other capacity. To truly be exceptional in this world is really to be about 5 to 10% better than the person next to you, right? Like, it's just that easy.
Hi, I'm Moshe Popack, and welcome to Common Denominator. Today we speak with Eddie Wilson. Eddie is a real estate investor, a CEO, a national speaker, and has a passion for business growth. He has built or run more than 125 different businesses and successfully exited over 90 of them, generating over $1 billion in business and earning him the nickname the King of Exits. Hi, Eddie, and welcome to Common Denominator.
Thank you, appreciate it. Glad to be here.
When I went onto your homepage, and you talk about the intersection between time, wealth, and purpose, how they're interrelated. First of all, I love that because I think about that a lot.
Sure.
What does that mean to you?
I think most people in life, they chase either wealth or purpose, right? Like, and they think that if they, in the beginning, they think if they chase wealth, they're going to get wealth. And the reality of it is as you chase wealth, it always eludes you. And so then they get kind of disenfranchised with chasing wealth. So they think, well, there's got to be something bigger, and they chase purpose. But the reality of it is if you actually control your time, if you control your time on a daily basis and you fundamentally put it into the things that matter, you end up gaining all the wealth and it ends up leading towards a life of purpose. So it's a very sequential process that's happened in my life. I chased wealth early, then I got disenfranchised, then started going down the path of purpose, but I didn't have the wealth or the means to actually fulfill purpose. And so then I went back and started going hard at time, and then going after time specifically allowed that process to happen.
I'm kind of seeing at this point in my life, a lot of things that I read about time and space, time and space, right?
Sure.
That it's a human construct. The more you focus on time, do you find that time kind of collapses?
Yes. So what I know about time is that there is always fundamentally, it is a human construct. And there's enough time to do everything that's necessary in my life, right? Like there's plenty of time. There's enough time for everything. But what I do is I actually exchange time for the value of money. What I find to be kind of fundamentally different in my world is that I grew up in a house where my father would say things like this. He would say, "Eddie, how much is that?" And I would say, "Oh, that's $5. He said, "No, how much time did you exchange for this?" So my very first car I ever bought, it was $1,800. It was a 1987 Pontiac Grand Prix, big boat, ugly car. And I asked my dad, I said, "I think I want to buy this car." He said, "Well, how much is it?" I said, "It's $1,800. He said, "No, it's not." He said, "You make $4 an hour." I was 16 years old, $4 an hour. He said, "How many hours do you get?" I said, "Well, I get 10 hours a week." He said, "So you make $40 a week." He said, "Divide how many weeks of work, and then to tell me if it's worth exchanging all of that time for this vehicle." And so my dad did that to me early in an early age, where it changed the value proposition in my life, where I started looking differently, not just at the dollars I had, but the time I have. So one exercise I go through in my life, and I go through every year, I've done it for 11 years straight now, is I toggle everything I do. So throughout the day, I just toggle. Right now, a toggle is running. It says I'm speaking on a podcast. I give all that to my CFO at the end of the year, and he gives me the actual equation for how much I created in wealth based on the exchange of my time. So time is a human construct. However, it is exchanged for something. And if I'm cognizant of what I'm exchanging my time for, then I get very intentional about it, and then the outcome and the production ends up increasing. So every year for 11 years, I've increased my output year over year over year over year. Now, that's not my passive income. That's not my real estate investments. That's just what I exchange my dollars for, or my time for, and what are the dollars in exchange. And so we do that exercise every single year at the end of the year. I give him my toggle, and he tells me, well, this is how much you produce, so this is how much value your time is yielding.
How can someone really increase exponentially, right? So I always see a lot of, the trap of comfortability.
Sure.
Let's say, right, they always say the first million is so hard, then the 10 million, then the 100 million,
Sure.
right? So what would you say is the X factor exercise?
Sure.
Like what, because everything's about like execution.
Yeah.
What could someone do that makes them have odds that are better,
Sure.
that they'll reach that level of abundance that they want?
Yeah, I think that we have this very kind of visceral understanding of time, money, wealth. And to truly be exceptional in this world is really to be about 5 to 10% better than the person next to you, right? Like it's just that easy. Most people are trying to become 100% better, but it's becoming 5 to 10% better on a daily basis, right? So the activity that I push is challenge how long it actually takes to do anything in life and see if you can cut it in half. So like if you, I run 27 companies right now under the private equity firm. I only give my executives 15 minutes. I don't give them a half hour. I don't give them an hour, because what I believe is that I can cut that time in half. So I went from having hour-long meetings with my executives to, could I get it all done in a half hour? Can I now get it done in 15 minutes? You begin to push the boundaries of what's possible. And so what I say is take a week time period. If you're struggling with getting the output or production you want, stop looking at the outcome. Stop looking at the dollars that you're trying to get to, or the wealth you're trying to get to, or the sales you're trying to get to, and see if you can manage the activities in your life and cut the time in half that it takes. If you just simply cut the time in half that it takes, it increases your productivity by 50%, right? Like it's all of a sudden you've begun to double that process. So it's like this exercise of just making sure that I give accurate time for what it accurately takes to do the things of my life. We naturally just say, well, I'm going to go to the gym for an hour. Well, could you do all that you need in the gym in a half hour, right? It's going to take me an hour to eat. Could you eat and get everything done in a half hour, right? And it's beginning this exercise of just shrinking down the time that it takes to do these activities, and then you'll increase the productivity.
Right. And I guess you have to have specific goals when you have that extra free time.
Sure.
Right? So you don't sit around
Just
and scroll and
Sure.
waste it, for sure.
What I noticed, though, is the moment that you began to put more emphasis on time management, the more likely it is that you won't waste the time, right? Most people that are wasting time are the ones that are just unaware of what it actually takes to get something completed.
For sure. As you mentioned, even before you had your wealth, right, purpose was very important to you. I find that too, right? It's about purpose, making impact. How do you create the vehicle, the vessel? What is it about humans that finding that purpose and impact? Why is that so important?
Because I think there's this kind of hole inside of every human that is striving for something that's really hard to fill with things. And so we try to fill it with things. We try to fill it with money, vacations, cars, houses. And anyone that gets to the place where they've outproduced what they even thought possible will get to a place where they lack fulfillment. And so then they take this kind of sharp right turn. I did it. Like I sold to these companies and still felt completely alone and unfulfilled. And so then you start searching for like, what is the meaning of life? What is this? Like, that's where most people get on this quest of like, is there a God? Who is God to me? And it's like, we kind of go down all these, pathways because everything that we put into our life did not give us fulfillment. What I found is that fulfillment in my life, and I think that fulfillment can be different for others, but for me, it's very much helping someone that cannot help themselves. Like, it's simply that. So whether it's a homeless person on the street or it's the orphanages that we've started, it very much gives me this satisfaction, this fulfillment, this deep fulfillment that cannot be given in any other capacity. I've searched the world for fulfillment, and what I find is if I can find someone who can't get there on their own and I can provide that path for them, then it gives me a deep sense of satisfaction and fulfillment.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the more you achieve your goals, it definitely happens that way. And you also get disenchanted, so you have to demand that your team and your people and the things that you're around also there's alignment, right?
Sure.
And I always think about that, like how do you get alignment, whether in for-profit or not for-profit? How do you make sure that all your teammates are aligned with your vision?
Sure. We have a culture of give back, and I use the word culture very intently. Most people look at culture in their companies, and they say, well, this is like a desire or a feeling that I'm trying to create. Culture is not a feeling. Culture is a systematic, evidential, awareness or behaviors that happen in your company. You say, hey, I want a company that has a family culture. Well, look back over the last 30 days and did they support each other? Did they love each other? Did they show up when they needed it? Right? Most people say, I want this culture, but it doesn't exist. So for me, I set out this time when I built Collective Influence. This is the new private equity firm I have. It's 2.5 to 3 years old. And I said, I want to have a give back culture. And the give back culture is that everyone finds their way to give back in some capacity, while we as a corporate organization also give back at the highest level, right? So every single meeting we start with me giving updates on the latest wells we've dug, or the latest businesses we've started, or the latest orphanages that we've built. But then I also encourage them to do things. Like we just a couple of weeks ago, we went over to Lakeland, Florida, and did a day of service for the homeless. And we rented trailers for haircuts and ice cream trailers and pizza and tacos. And I think we had 150 homeless come out in Lakeland where we just serve them. Well, I invite my staff to come do that with me. When I give out bonuses, not only do I give out bonuses in my company, but then I give them the ability to go to these foreign places with me to serve, build orphanages, serve the orphans, so on and so forth. So it's about stating what your purpose is, stating what the culture is, but it's then creating pathways for them to experience it. And I can look back and I can say that 40, 50% of my staff are very much in line with it, and there's still 40 or 50% that are finding their way. But I have to just, I can't beat them up over not, necessarily adhering to this idea, but I want them to experience it, because as well as I do, you experience that fulfillment once in your life and it's intoxicating. You don't want to let it go. So if I can get my employees to go on one trip with me and serve an orphan, they'll forever start taking that path, because it'll give them a sense of fulfillment that they've never felt before.
Well, it seems like you're extremely busy every single day. What does like a typical day look like for you?
Sure. So when we built the Aspire Tour, which is a big business tour that we put on 2 years ago, we do that every single month now across the nation. We do 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people. So I spend a lot of time on the road, because we build these tours, then we still stay in those communities. We have programs and opportunities in those communities. So Monday through Wednesday is my office days, and those are the days that I'm actually governing. I'm overseeing a lot of the companies that we have. That's when we're still buying companies, we're still selling companies. All my real estate, all of that gets managed really Monday through Wednesday. Thursday through Sunday is typically travel days. That's usually when I'm on the road, I'm doing podcasts, I'm out speaking, and then we typically have events almost every single weekend. So I'm 7 days a week right now, and I don't want to do that forever, but when you feel momentum in business, the last thing you want to do is slow that down, and so it's just the phase of life I'm in right now.
And you mentioned the Aspire Tour. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah, so my business partner and I, Andrew Cordell, 2.5 years ago, I had actually sold 76 companies in 1 year and was really in a place of retirement, and I was doing all the philanthropic things around the world. He showed back up into my office and he said, hey, I want to pitch you on an idea. He's an extreme visionary and I'm more of the operator. I love the actual fundamental running of the businesses. He walked into my office and he said, hey, I've got an idea. He said, the whole world has been shut down. These events really, he said, you don't see these big giant events anymore. He's like, what if we were first back to the market with big arena style events? He said, we know a lot of celebrities. Let's just invite them, see if they'll come. And he said, let's do something aspirational for the business owner and see if we can get small businesses to essentially assemble, and then let's go from there. Well, I said, I'll try one. If it makes money, then we'll do another one. We did Dallas, and we sold Dallas out. We went to Fort Lauderdale. We sold Fort Lauderdale out. We went to Denver, sold Denver out. Then we booked the entire year. Now we are 27 events straight. We've done Madison Square Garden. We did the Toyota Center in Dallas. I mean, this thing has just exploded. You know, Forbes said it was the world's largest business tour, and it's because every month we're hitting 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 people. And they just showed up, and so now we serve them, and it's been a great ride. This year, we actually have a big virtual one coming up in June, which we're planning on having 100,000 people live, and then we go international in the fall. So it's just this crazy. It really was not intentional. It wasn't something that I set out to do. It was just something we built, and it took off.
What would you say is the commonality, the common denominator of the people that come?
Sure.
What are they looking for? What's the problem to solve?
Sure.
And then the value through coming to Aspire that they take away.
I think what I thought was going to be the case is very different.
Always.
I thought when we built it, I thought it would be young hustlers trying to find their way. What it actually is it's entrepreneurs who have hit roadblocks and ceilings. They've got a business doing 3 million, but they don't know how to do 5 million. They've got a business doing 10 million, they don't know how to do 100 million. And they're looking for inspiration. And so what we have done with our celebrity and guest speakers is we've said, hey, we'll continue to give you the stage as long as you're authentic and real. And people intuitively know if you're authentic and real. They know it. They know if you're fake. They know if you're real. And so the people that you see with us month over month over month is because they've been real. And they tell about their struggles, and they tell about how hard it was to get to where they are. And then they talk about the pitfalls of when you're at the top, this is what it looks like. And that's been the journey we're on. And I think because we're giving true authenticity and proximity to the level that they're trying or aspiring for, they just keep coming back, you know? And so it's actually very successful people showing up at Aspire. It's not the unsuccessful people, it's the extremely successful people.
Right, because I think that that's exactly what it is. Curious, learning, life coaching, right? That's what I find. And they say like attracts alike, right? So
Sure.
So there's that commonality. Because I was there, I went to experience it, and it was really special.
Thank you.
Really, it was really nice to see.
Thank you.
I know also with all these exits, and I talked to a lot of founders after they have the exits, and we talked a little bit about the show before it. I think a lot of people, and maybe positive stories and not such positive stories of people that you've had many exits, right?
Sure.
So of people that have exited and what they got right and what they got wrong.
Sure. Yeah.
What would you see?
That's a loaded question. After exiting over 120 some companies now, I've done things very right and I've done things very wrong. And there's a lot of wrong things that I've done. But I think that the biggest thing that as I'm coaching people that are exiting, oftentimes I get those phone calls, hey, I'm about to sell my business. And oftentimes what I say is you have to get right with losing the identity of the business. Oftentimes an entrepreneur puts their blood, sweat, and tears into these businesses, and it becomes their identity. And so they think that this exchange of money, so if I make millions of dollars, I'm okay with giving away my identity. And the amount of depression that hits the shoulders and the hearts of entrepreneurs who exit their business is real, and it's large because most of them are losing their identity. And so what I oftentimes coach people is before you exit, there's M&A lawyers to teach you how to exit properly. There's tax professionals teach you how to avoid the taxation. There's all of that, right? The piece that I can offer is let me talk to you about what's life going to be like, and let's anchor into purpose before we get there, because our identity should be tied to our purpose, not to our business. And so if you can start that journey early before you exit, the exit process is just a step along the way. It's just a step on the journey.
Right. Yeah. I also find that a big part of the calculation is also the taxes. That people don't do
Sure.
the calculation of what it's going to look like
Right.
After taxes. And I know right now I have a friend, and he's doing a calculation. He has a private equity that came to him to do a roll-up in a health space, and he's thinking through, because a lot of times the founders have to stay in for a couple of years.
Sure.
Right? And in reality, a lot of these people are able to actually stay and not sell and continue to, right? Because
Sure.
like, how does your, as a, under this umbrella of private equity, right? We talked a little bit also before the show about like a widget and a service. Is that kind of how you see all of business? Just kind of macro, like what's going on in your mind when it comes to business, and then how to scale it?
Sure. Yeah. For me, what goes on in my mind is a little bit different. The motivation that I have in buying and selling companies goes back to this understanding of shrinking down time. You and I were investors. We invest in real estate. But I invest in businesses because I invest in businesses because if I can generate EBITDA or top line revenue and then get a multiple without actually having to do the work, there's nothing else in this world that gives me that rate of return. So let's say you sell your business today and they're going to give you a 7 times EBITDA. What that means is that if you were to do the same exact thing, get the exact same result for the next 7 years, you get paid today versus actually expending that 7 years. So when that equation hit my mind, it was like, I'm going to do this at scale. So when I look at the world, the way that I look at it is this way, and this is how I've built and scaled and exited everything, is I actually build the community first. If you look at Aspire, it's just a community of entrepreneurs. In the past, I've built the Think Realty community. That's a real estate investment community. I built the American Association of Private Lenders, FitCon, the fitness convention. So like, I'm building community. When you build a community, what you know is that if you're serving that community, they'll tell you what they need. They'll say, here's what I'm looking for. This is what I'm struggling with. And then if you look at, instead of trying to sell them as something additional, what you do is you just ask them to see their P&L. And you say, hey, what are you already spending money on? The reason I'm rolling up a tax firm today, or tax firms across the nation today, is because as I looked at the Aspire entrepreneur, right? We've had 90,000 in the last, I think it's like 12 months, sit in seats. And when we get to know these people, they come as a part of our community, they say, what we're really struggling with is I'm a $3 million business and I get H&R Block tax service. And if I got to 50 million, I could get Ernst & Young service. Where's the gap? Where's this service between H&R Block and Ernst & Young? And we said, we could build that, right? And so what we did, we started acquiring tax firms and we're essentially building that out. Well, now I have access to hundreds of thousands of small businesses that all know, like, and trust me, and they're already spending money on tax services. And I can say, hey, would you consider using ours? And they already know, like, and trust me, so they say, sure. But then they're a sticky user, right? They know, like, and trust me. As long as I provide a great service, they don't go away. Now, the true enterprise value is not the goose that's laying the eggs. It's not the community. The true enterprise value is the actual services that you're selling. So the largest exit I've had was an insurance company. And the insurance company was fed leads by Think Realty and the American Association of Private Lenders. And I still own those, right? I didn't sell the goose, I sold the golden eggs, And so that's how I look at private equity. Because I look at the macro. What community are we serving? What data do I have? What is it that they need? And if I can control that space, then I can actually control my value proposition.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I see. And it's so funny. I know guys that are literally making several million of EBITDA, and to spend 20 grand, 30 grand on tax or lawyers, they don't have that in their mind.
Sure.
But they don't realize 1/3 of the year they're working for the government.
100%.
Right? So that space, they don't talk about it. What they do is, for years, IRS, and it was like this light bulb moment for me. Fear, fear, fear. IRS is going to put you in jail forever if you're not like this.
Sure.
The way it actually works is, okay, I spend money by my tax strategists and lawyers, and there's a 26-year-old lady who works for the IRS in Louisiana, and once she gets to you after millions and millions of tax returns, and she'll speak to you, and she's not necessarily a lawyer or an accountant, and you have stuff in the file and you negotiate it if it makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's probably the greatest value, down to the bottom line, which is money in all of your entrepreneurs and founders and people in your community that you work with?
Well, we oftentimes, you'll hear people reference the 1% of the 1%. They're talking about this wealthy elite. And what they're typically talking about is this group of people that have so much money that they actually spend all their time just deploying their own capital, right? In kind of this space, that would be called a family office, right? So like I have a family office, right? Personally, I have a family office. If you look at the family office structure, and look at any family office, go to the Waltons, go to the Rockefellers, go to the biggest family offices out there. Mine's not that size, but if you just went to my family office or one of the big ones, what you see is half of the staff is half of my payroll is spent on keeping my money, protecting my money, not making money. Because like you said, taxation is the thing that erodes my wealth faster than poor investments, right? So if you look at the four kind of buckets of my family office, one is just the legal side. It's just entity and structure and the trust and all that type of stuff. The other is tax. The other side is just tax mitigation, tax. It's like for us, we have 3 tax attorneys on staff. We have a tax architect, right? And most people, they go to their CPA for tax advice. When you get to the upper echelon of wealth, what you find is the CPA is not the sum of all knowledge. The CPA is the one who's actually taking the direction, and they're the ones that are doing the execution. The lowest layer, we go to the CPA and we say, hey, can you give me some tax advice? And by November 15th, they're like, yeah, okay, do this, right? That's not how the wealthy work, right? Like the wealthy all year long are working on tax strategy. And we try to gain our big lump sums in January so we can spend the entire year, right? Like when I sold the company for over $1 billion, I had a 4-year payout where I did deferred sales trust where it all hits in January. So I have an entire year to try to deploy capital without taxation. And so you have this layer. And so the average person, they go to their CPA and they say, give me some advice. The CPAs on staff for us wait for the roadmap. And they're our tax architect, our tax attorneys that bless it and say, this is legal, right? Like this is not in the gray. This is, clearly in the, it's good. The CPA then goes and enacts it. And that's the layer that most people are missing, but they don't have it because they refuse to pay for it because they don't see the value in it, to your point.
Right. They don't understand it enough. Like I tell my son, the reason why he should go to either business school or law school so he can tell the professionals and he can understand the conversation. You can make money, you can, and that's where you'll stay.
Sure.
But to build wealth and going to that point to wealth, I was telling a friend of mine, 70% of worldwide wealth is real estate. Just for the audience, why are you invested in real estate?
Sure. Yeah. I own over 4,000 doors today, and we're buying an apartment complex right now, a Class A, almost every month right now. I'm still very, very bullish in this space. The reason, though, is because it is a hard asset-backed investment. When everybody freaked out a couple of weeks ago because the market dips, right? It's like, I don't freak out when I have a majority of my wealth sitting in hard assets. I'm a buy and hold guy, I know you are as well. And because real estate appreciates over time, it also provides cash flow. And then in the end, it provides the greatest tax strategy that you could imagine. So you sell companies. I sold 76 companies in 1 year for $1.27 billion. There was no tax strategy that even compared to getting into multifamily acquisition. Especially back then when there was 100% depreciation. It's like I could literally dollar for dollar depreciate every dollar and give it back to myself through the avoidance of taxation. And so when you arbitrage those, right? Most people look at the market and they say the S&P does this, or whatever. It's like, well, my hedge fund guy, he produces at 15%. If you actually arbitrage the tax savings and the yield and return of my multifamily, it's in the 30 and 40%. It's really hard to compete with.
Yeah.
And when the market goes to zero, and it can, my assets never do.
Do you believe small business owners, because I have these conversations, and I always tell them, just start in real estate. But in your opinion, do you believe that everybody should start, like even if they have a few dry cleaners or something, or
Sure.
that they should start buying real estate, or should they wait for some exit?
Yeah, no, I say there's really 3 buckets of my life. There's my active income, my passive income, and my legacy income. My active income is the things that I trade my hours for, and everybody does. Whether they own their own business or they're a W-2 employee, they're trading hours for dollars. My active income, I want to increase that. That's why I own so many businesses, because that's all the active income. But I always am transferring it into the passive side, which for me is real estate. I don't do a lot of active real estate. I have the systems and processes down where it becomes very passive for me. And then the yield of that, then it kicks into other vehicles like infinite banking and other structures. That is more my legacy bucket, which is the endowment for my nonprofits and passing it on to my children, stuff like that, grandchildren. So I say that you should always be taking something from your active bucket and putting it into the real estate bucket, always. And I think you should start small. And if you could only come up with 3 or 4 or 5,000, there's a year. There's still ways to get into real estate.
And it was great what you said about rather do a bad investment, because people don't understand that the way the system, capitalist in the U.S. is set up, job creation, right? And they want the economy increase in GDP, like they're constantly, and they support it. Grants, loans, low-cost loans, federal, state, county, city level. So you can either and a lot of people don't understand this, either the money's gone, you pay the IRS, or you make a riskier investment. That's why I love the idea of with 60 or 70% of information, you pull the trigger.
Sure.
Why it's better than 0 odds, because the money's gone.
Sure.
Right, because if you don't do it, boom, comes December 31st, you got to pay Uncle Sam.
It's gone.
Done. So that's a very important point, which I love. I just want to go through a few, if you don't mind, rapid fire questions.
Sure.
Wake up, first 30 seconds. What do you do?
Right now, breathing exercises and a little bit of gratitude.
Love it.
Yeah.
What's a book you've read more than once?
A book that I talk about all the time is Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. It's a Stoic, philosophy, and I love that book. I'm a voracious reader, but that's one of the ones I always promote.
Tell me, because I've done a lot of research on this, for you and the listeners, why do you think ego is so bad?
Ego is always in the way of everything I want. And it gives me a false positive, right? So like if I have ego and people prop it up, I feel good about it. But then I always find that it's the deterrent from everything I want. And so that book capitalizes on this thought that ego is thinking of myself higher than what I actually should think. So when I elevate myself above what my actual capabilities are, there's always a high probability of failure, right? So everything that I want is on the other side of my ego.
Love that. What's one word that people use to describe you?
Intentional.
Love it. What's your favorite karaoke song?
Favorite karaoke song is New York, New York by Sinatra.
Yeah, love it. And in that idea of the first minute when you wake up, the gratitude, when you think about gratitude right now, today, what's the thing that you're most grateful for?
Yeah. I am so grateful for family and life, and there's just so many things. But my parents lived an amazing life and had an amazing journey and taught me so much. I had a bunch of losses early in my life, lost my sister, lost my brother, but my parents' resilience and emotional intelligence and what they went through to help me gain success, even though it was in the midst of loss, was a gift that I can never repay. And so I'm extremely grateful for some great parents.
Yeah, I just want to point out, no one should ever experience that, but over and over, guests on the show and people that I've met that have really made a difference in the world have been able to transform that pain and that loss, and because it's something greater than themselves.
Sure.
Every single time. When you peel back, sometimes they don't want to talk about it too much sometimes, but it's really, that's really what the engine is, and that's the way the world really works.
Sure.
What do you find as the common denominator of people that really are making an impact in the world?
It's what you just said. People that have gone through significant loss seem to always have some significant output, right? People that have been hurt substantially oftentimes do greater things in the world. And it's because it's that gratitude layer, right? One thing that my mom taught me so much growing up, I lost my sister. And I was grieving the loss of my sister, and my mother would say, hey, Eddie, I know you're struggling. Talk to me about the favorite toy that you played with. And she would say, tell me about your favorite day. Do you remember the favorite thing we did? And she would get me to rehearse gratitude, and she would just constantly pull me back to this place of, and then she'd say things like, man, aren't you so grateful we had the time that we had with her? Would you ever trade that for anything? And what she was doing was she was reframing it in my mind. Then it was later, and it would reframe again, it would reframe again. Very first business I ever sold was a corporate takeover, and I lost about 30 million. And it was because of the lessons I learned from my sister, losing my sister with my mother, that I sat there and thought, what good, what can I be grateful about this horrific loss in my life? And it was that flipped everything for me. It's why I have all the exits today, is because I didn't allow it to define me. And that's the thing, is like, we all have losses. We all have trauma in our life to some degree. And you can either let that trauma define you, or you can let that trauma be a catalyst to growth. And I find that the people that are doing significant things in the world turn the traumas in their life into significant catalyst for doing something amazing.
Yeah, I always say, if the worst case scenario is like you fall out of the basement window, you're like, all the way and the only way to go is up.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
you always
So good.
But Eddie, I really, really appreciate it. It's really been great. I know definitely the audience got a lot from it. How can people, follow you on social? Maybe
Sure.
come to the Aspire Tour.
Yes. Yeah.
How can they do that?
Yeah, so I've been challenged this year to answer all my DMs. That's been quite the feat. But I still answer all my DMs on social. So Eddie Wilson Official. They want to participate and have a conversation with me. One thing that we're launching, because we want to democratize this information, is we're launching, I believe, what's going to be the world's largest free business event. It's called Business Growth 2025, and I have pulled out all the stops. My business partner and I have pulled out all the stops. We've got Kevin Costner. We've got, it's the craziest lineup you've ever seen, but it's completely free. And so if they go to any of my social, the links are in the bio, and I'd love for them to participate in one of those free events.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank
Eddie.
you.
It's really been great.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed my conversation with Eddie. If you haven't already, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform. Subscribing ensures you never miss an episode and helps us continue to bring you meaningful conversations that make a difference. Thank you for being part of our growing community. We couldn't do this without you. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you again soon.